Good morning. Today we're looking at all of Genesis chapter 27. And I encourage you still to read this chapter personally, because I think you're going to see how it reveals the danger of favoritism, deception, and impatience, even within a family chosen by God. And yet it also shows that God's sovereign purposes still stand. In verses 1 through 4, Isaac, now old with dim eyes, calls for Esau and prepares to give him the blessing. Though God had already declared in chapter 25 that the older would serve the younger, Isaac seems prepared to act according to personal preferences rather than the revealed promise. This reminds us that even faithful believers can allow affection and habit to cloud spiritual discernment. In verses 5 through 13, Rebekah overhears Isaac's plan and quickly devises a scheme for Jacob to receive the blessing instead. Rather than trusting God to accomplish his word in his time, she resorts to manipulation. Fear and impatience once again produce deception. Jacob hesitates, not because deception is wrong, but because he fears being caught. This reveals how easily sin spreads when hearts are not anchored in trust. In verses 14 through 29, Jacob carries out the plan. He disguises himself, lies repeatedly, and receives the blessings intended for Esau. Isaac is suspicious, but proceeds. The blessing itself affirms covenant promises, prosperity, dominion, and favor. Yet it is secured through deceit. The chapter shows us that God's promise does not depend on sin to be fulfilled, even though he may still allow his purpose to unfold through flawed actions. In verses 30 through 38, Esau returns and realizes what has happened. His anguish is deep and emotional. He had desired blessing, but he had earlier despised his birthright. This moment teaches us that spiritual matters cannot be valued only when consequences appear. Choices made lightly can carry lasting impact. In verses 39 through 45, Isaac gives Esau a second blessing, and Esau resolves to kill Jacob. Rebekah urges Jacob to flee. The deception that secured the blessing fractures the family. Jacob will leave home for many years, and the consequences of deceit will follow him. Sin may not cancel God's promises, but it often complicates relationships, and it brings painful results. In verse 46, Rebekah appeals to Isaac about Jacob finding a proper wife, setting the stage for the next chapter. Even in family conflict and broken trust, God's covenant line continues. We can see how this chapter points us to Christ, where Isaac, Rebekah, and Jacob each acted imperfectly. Jesus fulfilled God's purpose without deceit, favoritism, or any kind of manipulation. God's promise ultimately rests not on human schemes, but on Christ's perfect obedience. Today, examine whether you are trying to skewer outcomes through control or manipulation instead of trusting God's timing. Choose integrity over shortcuts, patience over pressure, and trust that God is fully capable of fulfilling his promises without your deception. God bless.